Welcome in. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines talk about God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. Now, this is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the faint of heart. There's nothing about who we are or what we say that make us experts, but you better believe that we're going to have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
So how much of that did you guys watch?
I watched the whole thing. I was supposed to be working. I had a deadline on Wednesday, and my house could have been burning down, and I would have stopped to watch that whole thing. And like my mouth was agape the whole time. Like I had like the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. Are we in the show now?
Might as well be. Yeah.
Okay.
I just kind of assumed when we made that natural transition we were, but now we have a weird chunk we have to cut out of the show.
You got to cut out of the show. I mean, you can leave it in if you want.
I probably will. This might be our thing every time. Are we going?
Are we recording? It's gonna be my catchphrase.
Because I was gonna say something really racy, and is this thing on?
Right.
Mike,
looking around for I make a Nephilim joke.
I went and turned it on in the living room, and I had to come back in here and do something. And Carrie comes in and she's like, "What in the hell is this on for?" Because it's not the normal thing that I would ever have our TV tuned to, because it's not. I'm not a C-SPAN kind of guy, but yeah, I sat out there and was drinking coffee, watching it, and I'm like, "This is wild. This is so weird."
I feel way left out now.
You didn't watch any of it?
No.
Have you watched any of the coverage of it? Like at the highlights?
I've seen some highlights. I saw the highlights that Walsh put on his.
I mean, this was kind of what I took from it. Like, they're interviewing one guy, right? And they're like, "So are you saying, in your professional subject matter expert opinion, this technology could not be created by man-made means?" And he goes, "Not by us, not by our allies, and not by our enemies." And they're like, "Really?" And he's like, what do you else want me to say? And then they started asking him like classified questions, because he's worked on these classified projects. He goes, "I can't answer that in an open hearing, but if we go to a closed hearing, I can answer that question." And they were like,
I don't understand why.
How do I get in that hearing? I'm going to get in that one,
right?
I don't understand why anyone is talking about anything else.
It's almost like it's so overt that it's, so I've got a cousin. So
it's surreal is what it is.
So one of my cousins, Zach, he's a Marine also, and he's listening. So Zach, hey, what's up, man? He posted a meme the other day, and it's like, all the conspiracy theorists now no longer believe in UFOs because the government's saying it's real.
That's right.
It's kind of like,
the thing is, if you're not a conspiracy theorist after that hearing, you're an ostrich. Yeah. Like whatever you believe about the nature of what's happening, you have to believe. There are two conspiracy theories on the table, and you have to pick one, or just bury your head in the sand. Either the government has been lying to us all these decades, and they really are in possession of craft made by otherworldly beings, or that's all a lie, and this is all an elaborate psyop. Either way, I mean, pick your conspiracy theory. There's no third option.
Wait, what about the option of we can actually do that?
Well,
what if it's the option like Spider-Man Homecoming?
But doesn't that fall into the second option though? That means that there really aren't UFOs. Yeah. And the government's pretending there are aliens to hide the fact that we've actually made these like super
sure.
Or just to throw us off from the Hunter Biden stuff or the border hearing that was going on.
Well, there's where the conspiracy theory comes in, right? So we not the what, but the why.
Right.
Why are they saying this, and why now? And why is it that every time that a big piece of the scandal gets released, a new hearing comes out or a new piece of classified information gets released? That's kind of where the tinfoil hat guys can really chime in.
And my problem on it, and where I get tinfoily, if that's a thing, is why aren't these congressmen that are outside of the loop calling for a special investigation?
Well, Schumer is.
Did he?
Yeah, Chuck Schumer.
Okay.
Chuck Schumer filed legislation to I don't know the exact specifics of it, but it's something to the effect of I think it's to create an investigation and to declassify information related to this.
Okay. I'm just I mean, we've had special investigations into like steroid use in baseball, and this seems slightly more important.
Yeah.
And whether or not Mark McGwire was taking androstenedione legally or not.
I think that our imagination has been going about this thing for the last 100 years through comic books and film and novels, that I think that a lot of people believe the things they've read and seen. Like, I just watched The Flash last night, right? Like, it was better than I expected. I was pleasantly surprised.
Compare it to the Batman.
Significantly better, because I don't think it takes itself as serious.
Okay.
I actually enjoyed The Flash and would probably watch it again if I just had nothing else to do. I've tried to watch the Batman again because it was like so critically acclaimed that like maybe I'm missing something. I can't get through it. I can't make myself watch it. It's so boring. But The Flash is stupid, but it's fun. It's like it
was better than Justice League and Superman versus Batman.
Really?
I think so.
I really enjoyed Superman versus Batman. I might be one of the only people on planet Earth that enjoyed it, but I liked it.
I like things about it, but
and let me clarify. Right. Of the three of us, I'm
wearing the T-shirt.
I'm the non-DC guy. I'm not a Batman guy or a Superman guy. Because of that, I think I enjoyed Batman versus Superman. My head wasn't blowing up with like, that's not canon, that's not correct. Like, I was just watching a movie, and I really enjoyed the Ben Affleck Batman the most. I like the old cranky Batman.
I don't mind Ben. In fact, I said to Delani last night, we're watching, I'm like, I like Ben Affleck.
I really like the Ben Affleck Batman, and I really, really like the Cavill Superman. So, because I like the two guys. I like how he looks. I like the way he brings it to life. Now, again, you guys don't like it because you don't like the writing underneath the story. I just like the dude gives off Superman energy. Like, of all the people that have played Superman, he's the most believable to me as Superman.
He was perfectly cast as Superman. He sucks as Clark Kent, but they didn't really have a Clark Kent character anyway.
Yeah.
In fact, they killed Clark Kent immediately, right?
Yeah, he's basically never Clark Kent in the movie.
Yeah.
Which is why
it's why Man of Steel sucked.
Yeah, you can't have Superman without the Clark Lois Superman love triangle.
And like I said, because I'm not a DC guy, I concede those points. Similarly, I don't know that Affleck was a great Bruce Wayne, but he was a really good Batman, right? Like I think American Psycho dude was a really good Bruce Wayne.
Christian Bale
was an awesome Bruce Wayne. Like, he pulled off the rich, prick playboy. I don't care about anybody because that's the gimmick I'm trying to, create. I think he
and the young version of him too. Yeah,
right. Like, that was, I didn't see, I guess the version of Bruce, the only version of Bruce Wayne that Affleck pulls off is the, I'm sitting in the cave, Bruce Wayne, right? Not that out in town Bruce Wayne. So that was my.
There were a couple scenes where he was kind of where he was out and about on the town and
right, but
flirting with Gal Gadot, but
it didn't figure as prominently. And his flirting with Gal Gadot was as Batman, because he knew who she was and she figured out who he was so quickly, right? So that was my take. But yeah, the UFO thing is crazy, and it kind of to our show's course material, the Heiser Facebook groups have been aflutter because he was a very non-UFO guy, right? At least a extraterrestrial alien life form guy. And so everybody in those chat groups I've been watching have been like, wish Mike could have seen this, wonder what he would have thought and all that kind of stuff.
You guys have seen that YouTube video. It's like an hour and a half long. I think Matt, you linked it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody should watch that.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it, but it's Michael Heiser talking about.
I think it's called Aliens.
Talking about aliens.
Yeah. It's talking about where he would go out and like go meet alien guys and basically like had to sit down with them and kind of, he essentially debunked their theories, but he did it in a very like open-minded kind of way.
Yeah,
he's such a nice guy.
He really was. He seemed amazingly nice and like super gracious and charitable, and like he was never out to attack anybody. He was just like, come at me and I'll defend it, but
I am not that. Man, maybe that's why I'm not, doctor, because I'd be like,
well, among other things, yeah.
and because I'm lazy, that's why.
Well, I mean,
I guess I could be a doctor. All I have to do is go to school. Like,
I mean, you just got to go to school. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. But my mother gave me an update. She corrected me on how she got baptized. So remember, Brian, you were talking about you had to sign the creed and whatnot to be a member of that church.
Yeah.
My mother calls me. She's like, I have answers, because she listens to the podcast. So now she calls me and says, hey, I got an answer to this and I got an answer to that. But basically, hey, no, I didn't have to sign anything, but she did have to do a lot of study, and she had to go before a panel of 3 different elders. Okay. So in that panel, she had an hour-long interview with each of them.
Dang.
So one of them in 3 consecutive weeks. So basically 3 hours worth of a murder board to say, yes, you are indoctrinated enough, you can go get dunked down in Escondido. So that's what
interesting.
So she didn't go into any of the questions, and I'm about to ask her, I'm like, hey, give me the list, man.
Right.
I want the list.
Like I need that.
So like, no, that's bullshit. That's awesome. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
but so there was a screening process.
There's a big time screening process. Yes.
Yeah.
So what I think is awesome is, 1, mom's listening to the podcast. 2,
right.
She wanted to give, hey, I need to clarify a couple of things. So that's what we want, right? We want that feedback. We want to be kept honest if we get something wrong. I'm waiting for the list of things of people telling Brian what he's wrong about.
I can't wait. Does Spotify have a good comment section?
It does.
Okay. Matt, I think you should share what your dad said.
He said he felt bad for you because we were picking on you.
Yeah, you guys do pick on me.
And I told him, stop being a little pansy.
That's not what you said.
No, I didn't say that to my dad.
You cleaned up what you said.
I would never say that to my dad. No, I just laughed.
I was
like,
he's like, actually the same thing. That's exactly what he said. Read between the teeth.
Yeah. Right. I wonder who else out there thinks you guys pick on me.
Hopefully a lot of people.
Yeah. You guys are mean.
Actually, I'm gonna look at the text so I get his actual what he said correctly.
So
he said it was very intense at times, and I felt for Brian getting attacked from both sides.
Well,
and then he asked me to clarify what the name of the show meant. So I explained the play on words to him.
I imagine it being even more sympathetic than that, but
it was just a few words.
All right. Well,
yeah. It was a text this long, and you were one sentence.
Well, Matt's dad, it's okay. I can take it.
His name is Mike.
It's kind of like a lot of biblical texts. You have a lot of things in there that are only like a couple words long, and people write these long dissertations.
Right. Yeah. He was like, it was really good podcast, really excited. And there were giants in this time. So anyway.
Like, wait. We just went right over that, right?
You're going to expand on this, right? Oh yeah. We're going to do it in Enoch and Jubilee. And then we're going to take it out.
Mike is okay. I can take it. I've taken it from these guys for 30 years.
He only cries half the time.
Yeah.
Only drunk. I love you,
yeah.
man.
I love you too, man. But so yeah, Congress had a hearing about UAPs this week, and that's pretty nuts. I feel like, there's a lot to say about that, and we've barely scratched the surface, but also I don't know why everybody else isn't constantly talking about this. What is going on in the world that's more important than this? I don't know.
That is weird though. Like I really agree with that, because like my wife hadn't paid attention to it at all, with the exception of me having it on, but she didn't listen to it at all. and somehow I don't know what kind of bastardized Facebook feed she has, but it didn't make it into her feeds. How does that not make it into your social media feed?
Yeah.
Like, you need to like rethink your entire friends list if that doesn't make it into your feed somewhere.
Right? At least a joke, like a meme page
Right?
that just
Like
puts in weird
some
memes.
kind of a random alien meme or something.
Yeah,
Tinfoil
the story is either our place in the universe is about to be fundamentally and irrevocably changed, at least in our perception, or why is the government spending time on this nonsense? One of those is the story, and it's a giant story, whichever is true.
Way it is. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Either is a big story. One's more fun and one's really ugly.
Which is which though?
I think the fun side, what you're referring to, I believe, is kind of scary. I think the average dude doesn't.
Scary is fun. Scary
I don't think
fun
that's.
Also.
I'm with you.
I'm not having fun with that at all.
I mean, I'm fine with it.
So, because I know, like you said, your wife didn't say it. My wife did, but chose not to follow it.
She was like, "What? No, click."
She's like, "Hell no." I don't. She doesn't do aliens, right? Even like movies and like, oh, it's an alien, and alien sci-fi is one thing, but then when you dive into something that might be real, she's like, "Nah, f that." Next channel.
Really?
Either scenario really ought to scare the hell out of us.
Why?
Well, either the government is lying to. I mean, the least frightening scenario is that our government is so corrupt and thinks we're all so stupid that it's spending time on this to distract us from something that sounds like a desperate, frantic attempt to distract us from what that should concern us all.
And I'm like,
that's
so government's lying to us. That never happens.
Sometimes I think the meteor can't come soon enough. So
what can't come enough?
The meteor.
The meteor, whatever it is
the meteor.
End our time and age, so we can get on to the council.
The other scenario is that we are insects at the mercy of giants, in a different sense, whatever they are. I mean, they're all. If there's any truth to this, this is a vastly technologically superior race, and we couldn't do anything about it.
I think there's other options. So it could be that they're not technologically superior. They could be the leftovers. They don't have a freaking clue how to build the ships. They just know how to operate them.
That's highly speculative.
I mean,
so is your version,
right?
Well, my version is not speculative. If it's true, I mean, if they have craft that can defy all known laws of aeronautics, and
maybe the really advanced people showed up on their planet and they ate them. And then they figured out they pushed buttons and kept wrecking them until they figured out how to fly one of them.
That's the comforting version in your scenario.
Maybe not if they eat us.
So,
but they're just.
So let me ask this: Do you think that in a scenario such as that, something that we're not doing to ourselves, is that when God intervenes?
Well, and that's my thing, right? That to be serious about this. I mean, obviously, I was being a little flip.
Sure,
mostly flip. I was being flip. Is that nothing about, and Matt's view, right? Nothing about the existence of aliens affects in one iota my faith, right? I've never had a view of biblical writings that precludes aliens. It's simply quiet on the topic, right? Unless we want to take a Heiser-ish view that it's anything that's extraterrestrial is simply Elohim, and we already know they exist, which is one view.
Supernatural, right?
Right. I tend to feel like the Bible was silent on aliens because it wasn't relevant. And if it becomes relevant, that could either be what, to your point, that could be what harkens or hastens the second coming, or it could just be a bump in the road of something that we have to deal with, and it's going to be a non-issue. Or they could be, wildly benevolent and friendly, and they could just show up and be like, we just want to play sports with you guys and do hood stuff with our hood friends. Like, we're just here to have a good time. Like, they could be a bunch of Will Ferrell, Will Ferrells that show up, and they're just like here to have a good time, and boats and hoes. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things that could happen. And if this is our extinction event, and this is somehow what's being talked about in Revelations in a really odd way, then I mean, nothing we can do about it anyway.
If this is our extinction event, then Revelation is off the table. I mean, that's
only the interpretation of Revelations is off the table. But I mean, fire in
Revelation,
the sky and a big dragon and whatever. Maybe the big dragon wasn't Satan, and it was a freaking. It was the Klingon bird of prey,
or maybe Satan made friends out there.
On those terms, I mean, Revelation just means whatever you decide it means. Taking it on its own terms, it's not about the end of the world. It's about the rebirth of the world. It's about humanity's ascension and restoration. If this is an extinction event, I don't believe that. I don't think there's even any particular reason to believe they're aliens. It's just that's the most handy cultural reference we have. Right. In previous centuries, they had sightings of goblins in flying castles, or divine beings in flying chariots. We have Star Trek and sci-fi, and so that's what we project on these beings when people see them. But
they go way back to like Mayans and Incans had their little spaceship alien drawings and whatnot.
Well, if that's how we're interpreting it, but I mean, I think they're Nephilim. I think they're. I mean,
some of it could be. I don't think all of it was. I think there's both in the Mayan stuff. Well, I think there's definitely Nephilim and there's alien. And again, I don't think one aliens. Dre, you're muted, by the way. I don't know if you did that.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're
I'm
not
just not
okay.
talking.
You just did that quietly. You just pantomimed. Yes. Okay,
that's right. Because you were talking, I didn't want to really interrupt. So it has some fun. I was courteous with my joke.
Well, if the Nephilim are still around, like, we have no idea what, if their genome is stable, what multiple generations of thousands of years of reproducing does to them. They might not be giants anymore.
Or are they still Nephilim? Like, is it a 1-drop rule to be a Nephilim? Or is it like some percentage that you have to be meaningfully Nephilite?
Well,
I'm pretty sure LeBron James is Nephilim.
So Shaq.
Yeah, for sure.
That was for Nathan.
And there's no reason to think their technology would have stayed in the Bronze Age. I mean, if they're
agreed. Well, it was better. They had better tech, right? That was kind of the point. That was the trade-off. Yeah. Was the Watchers gave tech for the Nephilim making capacity.
Right. But I think everything's about to change. I think our collective understanding of what humanity is and our story and our place in the universe, I think that's.
So you're leaning towards aliens are real?
No, I'm leaning toward these people are telling the truth about what they saw.
That's what I meant. You're not leaning towards the government cover-ups conspiracy.
I don't think that's it. No, I think the people who have been there, I think there are too many of these kinds of stories from all over the world from so many disparate interests that I think it's the crazy thing to believe is that they're all lying.
Yeah. But I agree. And what do they call that? Like mass hysteria syndrome or something like that?
Right. Yeah. And like, these people aren't hysterical. I mean, they're.
Well, the ones that Alex Jones talks to are.
Well, Alex Jones is kind of a magnet for hysteria, but.
I mean, they're making the frogs gay. So. The adrenochrome eaters, lizard people.
Every crazy thing he says, like, if you research it, there's usually a kernel of truth to it. Like they actually are making the frogs gay.
It's gotta be a little painful to be in Alex's head, because he's like, why will people listen to me?
Because I'm a little bit retarded.
I gotta be honest with you.
Like he'll be onto something, but it's like he deliberately comes up with the wildest, most extreme way of phrasing it, so it's for maximum crazy, and so people hear it and then they rule out whatever he's saying, and then as it turns out, yeah, they actually are turning the frogs gay.
He was talking about the satanic cults at Washington and the Pizzagate stuff and the adrenochrome and the lizard people. Like the lizard people is the only one yet to have some real validity to it, right? Everything else, with the exception of him, the mass shooter thing being a false flag event, that's probably the only one that he was fully wrong on. And that's not to say that we don't know for sure if anything about it was a false flag. Like, I'm not saying it didn't happen.
Which is why he walked it back personally.
100%.
I'm not defending Alex Jones.
Yeah,
but he definitely walked that back.
He 100% walked it back. Unfortunately, his followers didn't walk it back, and that's where he bears. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's actually what the terms of his suit were around, was his culpability, and
his influence on what that was,
putting the crazy in motion. And you can't, some of that stuff, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah,
fellas, the thing that would make me afraid, the only scenario that scares me, is that the only thing that would shake my entire worldview / faith is if the God of the Bible isn't the one true God. So when I say that, it's as if other gods come from here and say, hey, we beat your God, he lost, he's gone, look at me, I'm the captain now.
That would be wild, right? It's like, to me, everything in your Bible is right, except he didn't tell you that he had a couple of brothers.
Right.
Well, but that's logically impossible to happen, though. I mean, if you consider...
No, that's if your faith is 100% true and everything you read in the Bible is true. And I'm not saying that it's not. What I'm saying is that that's scary, that if that's the case, that's the scenario that plays out.
Well, according to the Bible, there are truths that are more fundamental and knowable than the Bible. Like when in Romans 1, when Paul talks about how the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godliness and wickedness of mankind, because what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. Like the idea of God, by definition, being the absolute moral arbiter. Like if you take the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, the moral argument, the argument from consciousness, collectively they point to a supreme consciousness who created the universe and who cares very much about how we behave. He has a purpose for humanity. Our every moral impulse, whether we're believers or not, the fact that we have morality at all speaks to, on some level, we intuitively know that there is a supreme moral authority to whom everyone is answerable. That by definition is God. According to the Bible, God has been actively involved in human history, but I mean, you could throw out the Bible and you still have those basic observations about nature and reality that point to God's existence. And so the Bible kind of informs what we can infer from observation and deduction. Like it kind of complements it. But the things that we can know about God, we don't need the Bible for. If the Bible is true, or even if the Bible isn't true, we can know those things. But the Bible gives us a documentation of God's direct intervention in history, which, if Jesus rose from the dead, then that validates it. And I think we can make a pretty good case that Jesus did rise from the dead. But the idea of there being other gods alongside the one true God, it's a logical impossibility.
You said a whole lot of things to build a point, and I don't agree with how all of that relates to the last thing you said.
I agree with Matt on this.
Okay. Do you have a specific question, or like what can
I'm just, so there's nothing in the, so the only inference to anything that you're saying is when God said, I existed before, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, and you'll have no gods before me. None of that says there's not another me out there floating around. That's not ever said. That is inferred through a few thousand years of philosophy and theology that has built a very long pipeline of a thought process. But it is never said by God or by Jesus.
Because it didn't need to come up, because it didn't
because it's not relevant to us.
It's not our God.
That's so understand what I'm saying. So I'm talking about this under the pretense of the stuff with the UFOs. And what I'm saying is the Bible is silent on the existence of other beings in the universe, because the Bible is silent on the universe. The Bible only speaks to Earth because the Bible is for humanity. It's not for the beings on past Alpha Centauri or where.
Bear with me for a moment here.
Because trying to talk, or because you're okay. So should we just keep going while you're
just give me 1 second.
You're looking something up. Okay.
Oh.
I'm going to finish my thought while you're looking up your point. So the Bible is basically a handbook for humans and their relationship with Yahweh. That's a pretty sound fact. It is not a handbook for non-humans, and it's not a handbook about anything that's not Yahweh. Yeah.
Do you know what Yahweh means?
It's not Earth.
Brian, it means God. Like, if you're going to use, tell me in the translation what it actually means, and that means that it means something else. What does it mean?
Well, but when you say it means God, then that begs the question, what does God mean? The whole idea of God as he's presented in the Bible, and as can be inferred from creation, from the universe. First of all, the Bible does quite emphatically show God, Yahweh, as the creator of the universe. The whole idea of it is that God alone is eternal and pre-existent. The
name doesn't say he alone. It says he was pre-existent. And
it does.
And I got to cut you off for a quick second, because this is relevant before we go down a further path. It does say something to the effect of he created the universe. But this is the words of very primitive human beings that didn't understand what a universe was.
Who thought the sky was heaven?
They didn't. I mean, Brian, we've had this talk before. They didn't have a concept of the zero.
But you're putting everything backwards, though.
But it's relevant.
I'm not saying it's not relevant. I'm saying you have it exactly upside down.
If you're talking to people in the Stone Age that can't comprehend a universe because they can't comprehend a galaxy, let alone a solar system.
Okay.
Then to tell them that this being invented everything in the entire universe that they can't comprehend, and that's actually what you meant, I don't buy that.
So just to be clear, what you're saying is that for all we know, based on that there are other gods other than God who are greater than or equal to him.
No, I didn't say there are. I said the Bible's quiet on the
topic. I said for what you're saying is that for all we know.
I'm not sure exactly what that phrase means, but sure.
I'm not trying to trap you. I'm just
I don't have a good enough reason to not believe it to be a possibility.
Okay. If what you're saying is true, then the entire Bible is negated, and
hence my fear. Hence I say the only scenario in this whole thing that we're talking about that would be scary to me.
Right. And I'm trying to put your fears to rest by explaining why that's a logical impossibility. And I don't even need the Bible for that.
No, it's a faith impossibility.
No, it's a logical impossibility. And
it's only logical if you believe in the Bible, though, Brian. It's not illogical if you're an atheist.
You're not hearing me. We could throw out the Bible.
Okay.
Well, first of all, according to let's be clear about what the Bible itself says. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. But I mean, all things were made through him.
Brian,
Nothing has been made that hasn't been made by him.
Brian, you as a avowed old earther cannot choose to use the first 3 sentences of Genesis literally and then use the next couple of chapters metaphorically or loosely.
How am I doing that?
Well, you just did it, man. So did God create the earth and people and animals in 6 calendar days?
No, and it doesn't say that if you take it on its own terms.
It says it in very specific English.
It
On the
wasn't
first
writ-
day, on the
it-
second day, on the third day, on the fourth day.
Okay, it wasn't written in English for one thing.
I'm telling you, the Bible that we're reading right now that you just read to me is in English.
Okay.
Right? That was English that you just read to me, unless I suddenly speak Aramaic.
Well, it's Greek, but I mean, like I'm so baffled at how you're getting to this idea that it's, and it, first of all, I'm not making the argument from the Bible. I'm only addressing what you said about if we read the Bible and take what it teaches, then it doesn't rule out the existence of other gods. It does.
I don't think what you just read ruled out what Matt talked about.
Okay.
Because it's only a reference to us. Read the first line again.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Okay. So what does that mean to an ancient reader?
Well,
because it's going to mean something different to us than it is going to be somebody who the audience was.
Well, right? It doesn't matter what it means to us. It only matters what it meant to them. And if we think it means something different,
which is why I'm bringing it up, because there's people listening to us.
But this idea of the universe, of them not being aware of it, our concept of the universe is predicated. The whole idea of the universe, of nature as a unified, cohesive whole, that emerges out of Christian thought. It's not something we came up with independently of that process of intellectual development. The idea, prior to the advent of Christianity, they saw nature in terms of a bunch of, they didn't think of nature as a unified whole. They didn't think of the universe. They thought of it as a teeming pantheon of personified natural forces. Like you could look up in the sky and see the sun god.
I agree.
And so the universe, they thought of the universe itself. Well, they didn't think of the universe itself. They thought of nature. It's you can't even talk about it without using modern language. But they thought the world existed eternally, and then all of the gods emerged from within it as components of it. And so that's, so if a storm blows through your village and wipes and blows down your house, well, you've angered Zeus or Thor, and you need to placate them. They thought of everything as all the constituent forces of nature as being independent, autonomous persons acting according to their own will. It's only because of the advent of Christianity that in the West that we came to think of the universe as a whole, as a unified, cohesive totality that should operate according to predictable patterns, because it's the product of a single divine mind. The idea that there are other divine minds out there alongside Yahweh, it's antithetical to our basic understanding of where the metaphysical principle that gave rise to science itself precludes that.
Okay, I agree with that statement more. That feels a lot more reasonable of a take. To say it's antithetical is different than saying it logically doesn't connect, right? So the difference is that to say it's antithetical, in the way I understand the words, is to say, if this is true, then you have to take everything we know and flip it upside down and tear it apart. And we have to do a whole bunch of different things now because the rules have all changed. But to say illogical means it's an impossibility. And I think those are different.
They're not. I just reworded the same thing I said earlier. That's but
to me it's a very different statement. When you if somebody says to me, this is illogical from here to there, that means you can't get there. To say it's antithetical to how we see things, that means we might misunderstand. That's the difference.
Well,
so let me ask this. So we're off on a tangent now. Shocker to everybody. Something we've never talked about, even amongst the three of us. I've read a little bit about it because it was intriguing to me. You guys. So this is relevant. It's germane to the conversation.
Yeah.
So Lilith, the mythology, or
it's a medieval Jewish myth.
Right, medieval Jewish. Yeah. But like, there's still, from what I've read, a lot of Jews that kind of put some stock in it, and that actually fits this conversation like directly, right? Basically, a peer that is just uninvolved and maybe not powerful, but still exists in that same level of reality. Kind of thing,
you're saying that Lilith is a peer to Yahweh.
She's his wife in the mythology that I've read.
Uh-uh.
Yeah, the 100% what I've read said that she is his wife.
I don't know where you're getting that. All of the earliest mythology about Lilith has her as Adam's first wife, a created being.
Right. That's what I understand as well.
She was flawed, but the idea of the name Yahweh, it's from Exodus 3, where God appears to Moses in a burning bush, and Moses was amazed that the bush was on fire, but it wasn't consumed. Went over to investigate.
Sorry. I used the wrong word. I used the wrong name. Asherah. That's the one that was God's wife.
Yeah. Well, that's
supposedly. I'm not saying I believe in it. I'm just saying, like, these thoughts have existed.
Or even the Gnostic myths of Sophia and the God of the Old Testament.
But yeah, it was 100% Asherah that I was thinking of.
Well, Asherah, Ishtar, Aphrodite, they're all basically ancient Near Eastern fertility goddesses. She'd be the equivalent of Gaia. She's typically depicted in Canaanite mythology. She's often depicted as the consort of Baal, or Marduk, or El, before El became
God.
Well, like there's,
and I think that El is probably the circle back linkage to where it became Yahweh's wife, right?
Right, but biblically, this was never. I mean,
agreed. I agree.
The Bible uses language to describe God that you do find in Canaanite mythology, because that's just how language works. Mm-hmm. You need familiar concepts to explain, but the Bible is very clear that Yahweh, Yahweh is the third person of I am. When he appeared to Moses as a burning bush, Moses asked him his name. If I go to the Israelites and tell them the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob sent me to, then they ask, what is his name? What should I tell them? I am that I am. Tell them I am has sent you to them.
Sounds like Popeye.
That's all that I am.
But the significance of the burning bush is that the fire didn't consume the bush. It was a self-existent fire.
Yep.
This was to illustrate God. Hold on a second. Sorry.
Do we need to send help?
No, there's
he's seeing aliens, dog.
My
Greys are coming through right now.
My pet lion was killing something, I think, but
because he can see shit you can't see.
So the fire that didn't consume the bush, it was to illustrate God's quality of aseity, which is self-existence. The whole point.
Did you say aseity?
Aseity is the ASEITY. It's a technical theological term that means self-existence. And you've heard me talk about this before. There are basically two religions in the world. There's the belief that the universe has always existed and always will be, and all life and consciousness, gods and men and all other forms of life emerge from within it as components of it. On the other hand, God alone is eternal and everything is contingent upon him. So if God alone, and that's consistent throughout the Bible, and I'm sure if I took a minute to dig it up, I could find a whole range of scriptures that say that God alone there is no other besides him. Isaiah's packed with stuff like that, but also it's the Greek philosophers arrived at the same conclusion. Like Plato and Aristotle arrived at the same conclusion, that they rather than the gods of Olympus, who are personified forces of nature, they reasoned from observation and deduction that there must be a supreme consciousness who is the first cause of everything. There isn't really room for multiple absolute moral arbiters or multiple prime movers, or there's just the idea of there being multiple gods. It just doesn't follow from what we can observe from nature and from our own conscience. And as it just so happens, the Bible reinforces that. But it's, I mean, the idea of there being rivals to God, it is a logical impossibility. So,
yeah,
but
I mean,
would that stop lesser gods from coming and killing all of us?
God himself would.
Would he?
Could.
Right. And so there's another thing, right? Like, I can kill you and there's nothing stopping me from doing that. Right. So why isn't there a level above me that can kill you?
That sounded very ominous, by the way. I might stop you.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. I might stop you. I'm pretty sure I would stop you.
I got some long range. I got some long range skills, yo. Nobody said I got to do it straight up.
This has escalated, guys. I don't understand what happened.
And when I say
and my dad's at home going, see, what is wrong with these
I know.
guys? Why do they hate Brian?
I'm kind of wondering that myself, man.
When I say I mean just a random dude, and you some other random dude, that because it happens every day, right?
Yeah,
all the time.
It happens in Brian's neighborhood a lot.
Yikes!
What
it doesn't happen in my neighborhood because I live in an armed gated community.
I don't want to freak my mom out. Let's not talk about that.
Your mom listens? Hi, Mom.
Probably not. No.
Well, she needs to.
She might one day.
She will. She's. Hey, Mom. Hi, Mom. Hi, Brian.
Get on here.
And my mom. Don't listen to these guys. Nothing happened in my neighborhood. Everything's great. Everything's great. It's a safe neighborhood.
It's crazy. They shooting.
I live in a nice neighborhood. I'm very rich.
What if
very
that's the
rich
plan?
and privileged?
What if we've reached the end and somebody else just comes and murks us all?
But you do raise an interesting point about whatever these beings are, what is stopping them.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think
pure apathy.
Like
they just couldn't be bothered.
Well,
the prime directive.
I would be interested. Like maybe they are aliens. We assume that if there are aliens and we join a larger interstellar community, we just assume that they're going to, you guys believe in God. That's so dumb. Just because that's how our science fiction conditions us to assume. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we find out that, like, yeah, we've been watching you guys, but the one true God forbade us from invading your territory because
prime directive?
He didn't want you to pollute us because you're sinful, and he needed to fix you first. I'm not even kidding. That's
right. Like we're the hood. He's like, hey, don't go to Earth yet. Those clowns haven't figured it out.
Well, they already did, right? The Watchers.
C.S. Lewis wrote have you guys heard of C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy?
No.
That was basically the premise of it. There was a.
I've been looking for a C.S. Lewis book to pick up. Maybe I picked that one.
I recommend
must be
it.
Inspired.
Yeah. I don't have the energy for that one today, guys. But or
it is not cheap.
I've got the collected trilogy. I can loan it to you.
Well, there's a cheap trilogy for like $20 at Amazon, but on the Walmart marketplace, there's looks like a first edition or something. It's like $140.
Can you read it and publish it to Audible, and then I'll listen to it on my way to work every day.
Sure, Dre. I'll do that tomorrow.
I'm thinking about reading your blogs out loud, Mike. What's your name? I mean, it's not Mike. Brian. Mike. It's my stroke.
First you threaten my
know.
life, and then you forget my name.
So yeah, I'm gonna read your blogs, and then I'm gonna sell those to Audible.
All right.
Ooh,
well,
that might be a thing right there.
I'm glad someone will. But I had another.
He didn't say he's going to agree with them. He said he's going to read them out loud.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, are you going to read them with it like sarcastically? With this sneering tone, like, yeah, and then he said this, and Brian.
Can you imagine reading the blog and you're like, and then you read it out loud laughing. You're like belly laughing as you read it.
I had a really profound thought about aliens, and I'm trying to recover it, but
C.S. Lewis?
No,
C.S.
well,
Lewis,
hold on.
That's where you were, and then we all got distracted again, because that's what
happened. Well, another thought. I mean, I do believe that they are. I think the most, if they are telling the truth, and I believe they are, I think the most logical explanation is that they are not aliens. They've always been here. They've been here for. We've been. We've had reports. Theory?
What's that? Like an Atlantis type theory.
So like the Nephilim are like underground in some like secret community.
Well, they could be Silurians, or they could be Nephilim.
Silurians.
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 They slur their word. They drink a lot of vodka.
No, it's from a Doctor Who episode. But there are these beings that have. You guys have heard me talk about this before. It's been 65 million years since the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. In that time, this little rodenty lemur-like creature that we call a Plesiodapus, that's in the fossil record, evolved into us. 65 million years. The previous global extinction event was about 120 million years prior to that. So if we evolved in 65 million years, for all we know, intelligent life evolved in the 120 million years prior to that, since the previous extinction event, and they evolved with sufficient technology to survive the Chicxulub asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. That could be those could be the beings that are being encountered.
It says the Silurians went into a self-induced hibernation because of the atmospheric upheaval from the Earth capturing the moon.
Sure. Yeah, that's one thought. Or they're Nephilim, but
maybe it's both. Right? But, maybe the Nephilim went into a hibernation because
they're like,
I started reading.
Me, cat. You don't flood me.
Right?
I'll go to sleep.
I recently finished Jeremiah. I'm in that part of the Bible where the exile happens, and when there's a ton of like when a lot of the prophets spoke, and like if you just by sheer volume, the exile probably takes up more real estate in the Bible than the Exodus does. Like it's a huge event that we kind of ignore. It doesn't figure nearly as prominently into our theology as it should. But the point of it was that God he made his covenant with Israel and Judah, and they were continually apostate, and God kept warning them, if you don't repent and keep the covenant, you're done. I'm going to cast you out. I'm going to remove my protection. And finally they did. And then Israel was conquered by the Assyrians. The Judeans were conquered by the Babylonians, carried off into captivity. And they were occupied by foreign nations ever since. They're never again being a sovereign nation of Israel until like 1948. It occurs to me that God made his covenant with all of humanity in the first century through Jesus. We continually go apostate. Maybe these beings, I mean, I'm just speculating. I don't have any particular reason for believing this. Maybe humanity has disqualified ourselves from his protection. And he's just going to let them have their way with us until we repent.
Isn't that a little in opposition to the new covenant?
No. Why would it be?
Every time that there's a covenant such as that, though, isn't there some kind of prophet that gives a warning?
Right. There's that too. Yeah,
so where's that guy today? Is that you, Brian? Did you just do that?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But
well, he's clearly not a prophet, because if God had told him to say that, he would have known God told him.
Yeah, I would know
right.
that. But
that's right.
if people feel convicted from what I'm saying, I mean, really the prophets, their role was to point people back to what God had already revealed. The fact that they had been.
That's all David Koresh was trying to do.
I hate
you. No, you don't.
I don't hate you, but.
So what do you think about the myth or story or legend of, Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard in the 40s reading from their little occult book?
The Scientology stuff does bleed in,
right,
lean into that,
and like, and they kind of ripped a hole in the atmosphere and invited the Greys and whatever other demons / aliens / whatever you want to call it. And then all of a sudden the era of the UFO came into the US. Like, right, it's like very close. And it had to do with, I mean, I've only seen like a documentary and read a couple of things on this where, the different like the parallel line was, in Los Angeles that kind of goes across.
Well,
and
I don't. Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard didn't do anything that Renaissance and medieval occultists didn't do 1,000 times before.
Well, sure, but if they're the latest ones to do this thing and rip a hole in whatever and bring these things into our existence or our realm, if you will,
I'm not familiar with that specific story that you're referencing, but there's an ongoing precedent in Western occult tradition called angel magic, where the practitioner is communicating with or purportedly communicating with angels and getting esoteric knowledge. It's very weird how much this parallels the Mount Hermon Tower of Babel incident, but it's kind of the same thing, which is. It's something I've been investigating a lot recently because, as we've discussed, the Book of Enoch was not known to the West until the late 19th century. So where they got this idea is it's an interesting question that I've yet to find an answer to. But yeah, that is kind of a recurrent. Like what you're describing is essentially what Mount Hermon and the Tower of Babel were. It was mortals petitioning otherworldly beings to descend and give us.
So are there current Nephilim? Is that what we're seeing in these reports to Congress?
That's what I think.
Okay.
Again, I don't claim to know, but I think that's the most parsimonious explanation for it. So yeah.
So I just did some quick research while you guys were finishing that thought. The whole thing with the aliens that Dre was mentioning, Aleister Crowley, there's a ton of the stories about what he did, but the first concept of a gray comes from Aleister and his drawing of an alien named Lam, Lam.
That's right.
And he summoned him through some kind of sex magic that involves sex without orgasms. And you have to do this ritual, and then that allows you to open a communication capability to this gray.
I probably don't need to tell this to you guys, but just for the kids at home, I talk a lot about John Dee, Western occultism, Aleister Crowley, and the like. I am not a fan. I'm not a practitioner. I read a lot about it because I think it has a lot of connection to the ancient Near Eastern religions that from Babylon, and I want to know how it all connects. I'm not a fan. I'm not a practitioner. I don't practice the occult, unless. But just with that disclaimer out of the way, Yeah, the stuff about Aleister Crowley, the ancient Near Eastern religion was a lot of it revolved around ritual sex with like the King Og of Bashan, when Moses and the Israelites conquered the Amorites and killed King Og. They mentioned the dimensions of his iron bed. And it's like a huge bed. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but Michael Heiser points out those are the exact dimensions of the sacred bed of Marduk. Marduk being the Babylonian storm god. He's basically the equivalent of Baal or Zeus or Thor. Slayed a dragon with a sacred storm weapon and became the king of the gods that way, just like Zeus killed Typhon, Thor killed a Midgard serpent. But the sacred bed of Marduk would go atop the pyramid, and we don't have a lot of details, at least not that I've read, about what the ritual was, but Marduk wasn't there for Marduk to take naps. Let's just put it that way. And you see a lot of that in
he didn't put in enough work then.
Yeah, well, I think he just came down and he came down for booty calls was the idea. But you read a lot about it's the Bible talks about it kind of euphemistically a lot, like when you read about how they put up Asherah poles, groves of Asherah poles. But they do mention shrine prostitution, sacred prostitution in the temple of Baal. The idea of it was that in this is just another example of how it revolved around ritual sex. The idea of it was that when it was raining, Baal was the storm god. He was the rain was him penetrating Ishtar or Asherah, the earth goddess, and fertilizing the earth, and that's what made the crops grow. So if there was a drought, means they weren't in the mood, and worshipers needed to get him in the mood. So they basically put on like live porn shows in the temple. That was their temple service. This was to arouse Baal and Asherah to perform so that it would rain, so their crops would grow. And there's just a couple examples we know about of ritual sex being part of the ancient Near Eastern religion. But the idea was it was kind of a form of sympathetic magic where, as above, so below. Humans would enact what they wanted the gods to do. Sometimes humans would be offered as partners with the gods, as in the sacred bed of Marduk. But considering all of that, and considering how the Nephilim came about originally, basically they're repeating the behaviors that happened on Mount Hermon that gave rise to the Nephilim, and that's why they're giants later on. But the Aleister Crowley stuff was pretty much along those same lines.
Well, if Aleister Crowley and his ilk are hearkening back to a time where they were given extra knowledge and better technology, and so if they can summon those things again, then they can become the men of renown in our age, right?
I think that's the promise that the spiritual forces of darkness would be making, but I don't. The irony is that humans were kind of trapped in this state of primitivism, where they looked to lesser gods for this knowledge. But then with the advent of Christianity, and we in the West, because of Neoplatonic philosophy and Christianity, and this idea of the logos being the underlying rational principle that governs the universe. And it kind of ties into the angel magic thing, like,
right. Because if you're not progressing through normal science as we know it, due to what we know in philosophy and Christianity and those ancient Greeks, you want to take a shortcut, right?
Or
And
try
that's
something different, right? It's
you
like,
want to try something different.
But that's kind of the point, though.
No, they're progressing, but not me.
Right.
I'm not progressing, and I'm not feeling. I'm not good at calculus.
It can't be because I wasn't working hard enough.
That's
right. Clearly doing
that's the lore.
Right. So it's funny. We just watched a movie the other day called The Ritual Killer. Have you heard of this? So it's got Morgan Freeman, Cole Hauser of Yellowstone fame, Rip, and also the main bad guys played by Vernon Davis. Matt, you'll appreciate that. A former tight end of the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah. So he basically, there's this old African ritual where you can, by the Zulus from a long ago, where you can gain power from the gods by saying magic words, bleeding people out, and while they're still alive, and if you eat their eyeballs or their hearts or their brain, then you have these extra. So this guy is an old shaman that can do these things, and he's extra badass, but he sells his services to super elites that want to close a deal and have more forethought or better foresight, and they're like snatching children and murdering them and eating their eyeballs.
How was the movie?
It's okay.
I was going to say it got a 19 audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's because it's kind of, and
it's an 11 on the tomato meter. So it sounds like an Andre Bibbs movie.
Here we go. In fact, so it's funny. It's a little insight on the Bibbs couple when we choose a movie. Delaney is very, if it's got people that we recognize and love, she's like, we're watching this movie, and like 8 times out of 10 it sucks. It's like how can you go? It's got Morgan Freeman and Cole Hauser. Like,
it's got to be good.
It's got to be good. You watch it, you're like, wow, this sucks.
So for the kids at home, Dre and I have a 25-30 year relationship that's somewhat predicated on bad movies. So that's why I made the comment. There was a time when it seemed like his goal in life was to trick me into watching terrible movies.
I got that from my dad.
Yeah.
So yeah, because my mother worked at a video store, so she got a free movie every day.
So she could just bring home anything.
My dad.
And at some point, you watch everything, right? All the normal stuff.
Correct. Yeah. That's what happened. VHS galore.
Yeah.
So
yeah, The Ritual Killer. I wouldn't watch it unless it was just on. But it's got Vernon Davis, and you get to watch him because I'm like, wow, this dude should go D1. He's like blasting dudes, like running people over. And then I look, I was like, oh shit, it's Vernon Davis.
He's a Pro Bowler.
Yeah. He's fast. He actually had good running for him. You watch movies and people can't run. You're like, that guy is stupid. This guy actually looked like he was an athlete.
Could he act though?
No, but he did put on a good African weird / British accent.
Okay.
And that was not bad.
I mean, that's
in fact, it threw me off from being Vernon Davis because I'm like, what
that's something.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Derailed that, but ritual stuff and ancient they're making movies about it now, right? Like even more so.
A couple of things about the alien angel magic thing. The irony is that we were kind of trapped in this primitive state until the advent of Christianity, which gave rise to the scientific revolution, and then that's when our technological abilities just blew up.
Interesting, right? Because now people that do science will say like, that's because God doesn't exist. Well, it was God that led us to
the science deniers that are Christians.
But the irony is that like the lore of like the first thing people think about if there are aliens is, well, what can we get from them from technology? This is going to change everything. And it's kind of the same thing that was on offer with Mount Hermon. You let us in, you give us access, and we'll give you the secret knowledge that corrupted them. But since culturally we've moved on, now we don't believe in gods and watchers and Nephilim and angels anymore. But now aliens are gonna be here, and people are gonna want to make the same deal.
But isn't that what Adam and Eve also, the deal they tried to make?
How so?
What
do you mean by that?
It was. I mean, this the fruit of knowledge, right?
Well,
so I think they were taking a shortcut to try to get to what was rightfully theirs anyway.
I think it's important to distinguish that it like, and this is the story is often told as it was the fruit of the tree of knowledge. It was the fruit of a tree of a very specific kind of knowledge, that being the knowledge of good and evil. So that distinction is important because people draw a lot of things from that story that I don't think are there, and I think are misleading. A lot of people take that to mean that knowledge itself is intrinsically corrupting, or even that the devil was the good guy because he wanted to enlighten them.
I mean, I guess you. That's not what I was inferring.
Yeah, I'm not. I see
what you're doing. Yeah,
yeah. I'm not insinuating that you were saying that, but just it's a.
I think it's a fair distinction for sure.
Yeah, I mean that story is so. It's probably the most misinterpreted piece of literature in all of human. And all of literature, and
the most.
The most, yeah. That one story, I would make that argument. Sorry, my headphones popping out, but I
mean that's a bold stance to take.
I would challenge you to come up with a rival piece of literature that is more misinterpreted.
I think the Tower of Babel is a second instance of that. It's a second instance of the Adam and Eve story.
I would say that it's well, I think it was a different set of temptations and enticements that were in place there.
I mean, it was about knowledge,
which is my point, right? So that's what we're still trying to do even today.
Give me just a second.
Okay. But I mean, I think that the two were. I mean, and I will, when Brian comes back, we can get him to clarify, what his pushback is. But even the conversation that we had earlier when we talked about it a couple of weeks back, that was specifically what we said was.
Sorry about that.
That the two events were like directly linked, right? Like, I mean, I guess we could split hairs about the 5 whys that led into the event, but broadly speaking, broad strokes there, I mean, it's 1.0 and 2.0.
I would say Tower of Babel was 3.0.
What was 2 then?
Mount Hermon.
Fair.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. Okay. I guess I just kind of whitewashed it.
And I think we all believe that too, just from, I mean, that's why we're here, right, Heiser?
Yeah. But I think that the distinction that needs to be made is that, well, the Garden of Eden and Mount Hermon, those were humans being seduced by wiser, more powerful beings. The Tower of Babel was humanity chasing after it. Like that was initiated by humans seeking the Watchers, not.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't know about that either.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay, where am I wrong?
Biblically speaking, it says it the other way.
Say that again, Matt. I don't understand what you just said.
We're talking about the Nephilim, right?
Okay.
Did I zone out and misunderstand you? You're saying that the humans seeked out the Watchers
in the Tower of Babel, yeah.
No, he's saying the opposite. He said the first two was being seduced by outer sources, and we made bad choices. Where the Tower of Babel is us seeking them.
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay. So I did space out for a second then.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, then I agree with that.
Okay. But
I agree because biblically, I mean, that's exactly what it says, right? When God addressed the Elohim and says they try to be like us, right? Like that was.
I don't know.
Sorry, this is terribly unprofessional of me.
It's.
I think Adam and Eve was on a different level than even the Watcher incident because they knew better, because they walked with God, for crying out loud.
I actually disagree. I would say it the opposite way. I don't think Adam and Eve really understood. I think they were more naive. They did walk with God. And so you would think the people that were right there at the source would have known better. But that was the first time man was fooled or deceived, right? So they didn't have any history to work off of. They were the first ones.
There's something about that I don't know why. And that's something I need to go look up. But
fair.
There's something about that I have a feeling that's not the way I see it.
I'm just thinking, the serpent, whatever, the Nakash
sure.
He was like, hey, come on, man. He doesn't really mean it. God loves you. You're his people. You can do whatever you want.
Well, it was the opposite of that, actually.
What do you mean?
Well, it wasn't, God loves you. He wants you to do this. It was
like God's hiding shit from you.
Yeah, God's holding out on you.
God's not giving you all the things you need.
God knows that,
but He won't kill you because He loves you, right?
That's my point.
Right.
I'm taking some editorial privilege with the conversation because we don't know that the conversation was quoted with scare quotes. It was the gist of the conversation, right? But what I'm getting at is he's like, he doesn't mean it. He's not going to kill you. You're his people. You're his chosen people. He ain't going to kill you. And so Eve was like,
And he knew that she literally wouldn't die on the spot, right? It wasn't like straight poison. Right. So take a bite. See, you're alive. You're good.
But that gets into the death being metaphorical versus literal.
Right.
Stuff, right. But my point is simply, I'm just working off the premise that Adam and Eve didn't have examples before. After Adam and Eve, every other time it's like, did y'all not learn from your idiot grandparents? It's so every time after, God's like, God, how many times do I have to teach you the same lesson?
I'm just going to flood you.
Do what I said, right? Yeah. And imagine how aggravated God was that he promised he wouldn't flood the earth again. So he couldn't use a flood. So he's like, I got it. How about y'all can't communicate anymore? This will amuse me for a while.
I'll just disinherit you.
There's so much about that I disagree with, but I don't know where to start.
Which part?
Well, it's...
You just said this. You try to figure out where to start, Matt. Give him a second. Look on your side, Brian.
Start in the middle. Start in the middle and work your way out.
Well,
contact right.
Going back to the he knows he won't die that moment. There's it says that God they covered themselves with fig leaves, but then God gave them skins to wear. Presumably something had to die for those skins, which could have been the atonement that spared them being killed in that moment. Like God killed something else.
Interesting take.
It's not mine. It's been around. It's not it's not the standard interpretation, but it's out there. But that,
I'm not sure I've heard that one.
But that would explain why they didn't die in the moment, that it was a prefigurement of the sacrificial atonement as a concept, but Jesus's atonement specifically. So while they didn't die in the moment, something had to die.
Hang on though. I want to pick on that just for a quick second, because I've never heard that either. That's I find that to be weird, because the concept of a sacrifice is when you have to give up something meaningful. And if they probably didn't care because it wasn't mentioned to be meaningful enough that it was something that they cared about. And
Adam had named the animals,
but God did it for them. So it's not like they didn't have to put themselves through the pain and agony of the sacrifice, and they didn't have to pick the thing and then obsess over it and be sad about it and then do this.
Well,
God just offed something and then ripped the skins off and gave it to him, and they're like, you should feel bad about this.
Well, I think you're assuming a lot about their...
I have to assume a lot because it's a made up interpretation that has no basis. So we're often the field.
But it's a pattern that you see throughout the Bible, like atoning sacrifice.
Right. But when it's something of yours, like you have to go kill the fattened calf, you have to kill your son, you have to sacrifice something.
But as you said, that they were new to this. They had been given dominion of the earth. Adam had named the animals, which is a sign of authority. Mm-hmm. They didn't see animals as food.
Correct.
So seeing animals killed because of what they did.
What if that was a unicorn? That's why we don't have unicorns now.
That's probably exactly
what happened.
Thanks,
Eve. You're now we don't have unicorns because of Eve.
Yeah.
Pegasus. We could have had flying horses, but no.
But
because the next incident of sacrifice that went awry was Cain and Abel, right?
Right.
Where Abel's given his best trash, and Cain's like,
Mm-hmm.
I really dig this watermelon, dog.
Cain gave wasn't good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is really good watermelon. And
I mean, it's interesting. I've never heard that before. That I got to think about that.
And you've heard me talk about what the flood meant in terms of the ancient worldview. I mean, it wasn't just a really big natural disaster. It was a reset on creation itself.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, you should probably briefly restate it for people that are new to the show.
Okay, so in the book of Genesis,
people are like, "Thanks, Matt. I wanted to hear what he had to say," and you had to say, "Yeah." Now I don't know what he means.
So the book of Genesis, like as we've mentioned earlier, they had no concept of nothing. They had no number zero. The idea, they didn't have any concept of the vacuum of space. So the ancient understanding of the universe was that it was all pre-existent water. So God created time separating light and dark for day and night, created space by separating the waters above from the waters below, created earth by separating the dry land from the waters below. And then he created time, then he created sun, moon, and stars to be clockwork on day 4, and then he filled the sky and the sea with life on day 5, filled the earth with life on day 6. So when he flooded the earth, it wasn't just a big rainstorm and a big natural disaster. It was basically the undoing of the first 3 days of creation. He erased that distinction between opposites. And I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me and I don't want to take the time to look it up. But in Genesis 9, after Noah and his family leave the ark and God makes his covenant with them, tells them that just as I gave you the green plants for food, now I give you everything that lives and moves you can eat. And then he promises not to flood the earth. There's a few lines at the end where he says, as long as the earth endures, day and night, seed time and harvest will never cease before me. Like that's part of his promise not to flood the earth, which implies that the flood wasn't just an interruption to the distinction between the waters above and the waters below. It was an interruption to everything. Like he basically paused time itself for the reset. And this idea is kind of reinforced in that you have in the genealogies that follow. Like you've got 10 generations from Seth to Noah before the flood, then you have 10 generations from Shem to Abraham. The suggestion being that this is basically a restart on creation and a restart on humanity. So when he promised not to flood the earth again, it wasn't merely, well, I can't kill them all that way again. The promise was, I'm not going to destroy and reset creation again.
So, you've said that before?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I don't know.
I said that on sitting in this very spot on this podcast. You guys don't pay attention to anything I say.
No, I'm reading it. So it's Genesis 9:12 through 16.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm going to read it real quick. This is NET for folks listening at home. I prefer the NET personally. Says, and God said, this is a guarantee of the covenant I'm making with you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all subsequent generations. I will place my rainbow in the clouds, and it will become a guarantee of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, then I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures of all kinds. Never again will the waters become a flood and destroy all living things. When the rainbow is in the clouds, I will notice it and remember the perpetual covenant between God and all living creatures of all kinds that are on the earth. So I don't know, man, because like,
where did you read that from? Where did you read that from again?
That's Genesis 12 through 16 in the NET, the New English translation.
What chapter?
9. You were right about it being 9. So
I think I was wrong. It was 8.
what do you mean? You said in chapter 9 it says that I'm never going to do it again, and that's what
Well,
I
yeah.
read.
Okay, in chapter 8, then Noah built an altar. This is verse 20. We're 21. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. That's the part I was referring to.
So there's two different things going on there. So he says, I'm not going to kill everything as long as the earth is stable. But then
this is what's going to remind me to do it.
But then he says,
every time I'm pissed.
Right. And then he says specifically, I won't ever flood the earth again. But he's like, and I won't kill everything as long as y'all don't jack the earth up too bad.
But that was a reiteration of the same thing you said before.
No, I get it. It's one of those deals where it's like the two stories of creation kind of chapter in front of another.
He won't do it again as long as we don't put a lot of carbon into the air. But since we are,
all those cow farts.
No, that's not God. The earth itself is mad at us. Mother Earth is mad at us. Gaia is
God.
Gaia
is mad at us.
Or is it Ishtar?
I think I saw that on Moana.
Saint Greta, the prophetess of
how dare you,
Gaia.
Stolen my hopes and dreams.
No, it's how dare you.
You see the meme of her in a bikini? And it's like, it's not the only thing that's been hot. Was that you that said that, Matt? Was that?
I feel like I can neither confirm or deny.
I don't feel right about this conversation.
It was definitely Michael that sent it, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not your dad. Different Michael.
Michael Johnson.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Not the world-class sprinter. He's the crappy sprinter that we know.
The gold, like the gold shoe wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when MJ sees this, he's going to get mad. He's like, "What do you mean? I'm not a crappy sprinter." Well, compared to the real Michael Johnson,
he's going to be mad because we doxed him.
Well, we didn't tell anybody where he lived. We didn't tell anybody he lives in
well, they know
Johnson?
They know Michael Johnson, man. They're like Michael Johnson is not gonna.
We didn't tell everybody that he lives in Laurel, Maryland.
Laurel.
He does.
He's probably still anonymous.
And he's black.
Yeah,
black in Maryland. You can never find him.
He's gonna.
You whittle that down.
Yeah.
Although he doesn't say Earl, and Earl, so you might be able to find him.
like Odell Beckham does.
Yeah, that was a great clip.
That's pretty funny.
He'd been doing his homework.
Yeah.
Or Brian, when we
that's sports ball.
When we leave Brian out of sports ball and shooting.
Yeah, I don't. For the kids at home.
So that was the other thing Nathan said to me. He was like, he goes, I wasn't sure. I didn't, because he couldn't see our faces. He could only hear Brian's voice. And he's like, that dude sounds familiar. I don't know if I know him. And then when he said Shooty Hoops, he goes, I know who that is. I met him at Andre's retirement.
That guy's a legend.
I
know that guy. How could I forget him?
Exactly.
Yeah. Unforgettable. I was at a party for my wife's niece yesterday. People were sitting around and like, you know what Joe Rogan, Matt Walsh, and I have in common? And they're like, what? I mean, you should know. Hello.
That's awesome. Yeah. But yeah. So I think that's a wrap for today, boys. Anything you want to close out with?
My brain is just squeezed dry.
I don't know that we solved anything, but I think it was a good chat. We did our usual. We started over here and ended up way the heck over here, and
I think we established monotheism.
I don't know that it was ever really in question.
Wasn't it? Wasn't that what you're?
I was playing devil's advocate with you. I don't believe in other gods.
I'm telling you what could be a fear.
I'm 100%. I'm all Yahweh.
If something could shake the worldview and actually make me scared, it would be that. Right. But since that's not a thing, I'm not scared, is what I'm saying.
Well, and I was just trying to reinforce that you should never be scared of that. Because
he was trying to help you sleep at night, Dre.
It's because
I'm good.
It's a logical impossibility.
I'll punch an alien in the face.